So this is like insane, but also what this means for the rest of the league is also kind of fucking insane. So if you guys haven't seen it, um, the whole LAT super team rumor thing that came out, Jake and Ronnie ended up tweeting today that it was like pretty far along. So this looks like it's going to end up being the LAT roster for Black Ops 6, which is fucking insanity. Going from, budget working with, no pun intended, scraps to two of the top like 4 or 5 players in the league next year. Obviously retaining Dan, they're bringing in Hydra, Scrap, and Envoy. This team's fucking insane. I mean, I'm not really gonna give like crazy input on the roster because the names kind of speak for themselves in this situation. What I am interested in though is now where orgs like Toronto and New York are that were definitely solidified in like the upper part of the league, and now is where things get interesting because Toronto has now lost Envoy and Scrap. They're left with Toby and Insight. I don't know if they're even going to retain those players. I don't know what happens in that situation. C9 is now a team of 2 because they now have Skies and Kismet. They dropped Dante or Sib. That reasoning for that seemed to be outside of the game, some external like team chemistry stuff based on clips on streams and things like that. So I think the likelihood of him going back and playing there now is probably pretty low if I had to guess. So now we have 2 duos of, to put it bluntly, just players that were less skilled than the players that ended up leaving. So now those orgs are like, I think kind of like removed from the pedestal a little bit because again, there was the consensus top 4. Now they're no longer, in my opinion anyway. So now I'm curious to see who ends up playing for C9 and playing for Toronto. Is there a world where one of them just ends up completely rebuilding and they mesh? I think there's a Toronto rumor going around with Beans, I believe, right, chat? Could be wrong on that one, but I think there's a rumor going around with like Beans and like Hixie or Cammy or something like that on Toronto with Toby and Jamie. So there's like a European team going there and something like that. I don't know anything about C9 specifically. I haven't heard anything rumor-wise either. So that's interesting, but back to the LAT situation, this team is fucking absurd. I think it's insane, the slaying power and respawns, obviously Scrap and Hydra. I think it's really big for Paco specifically to play with a player like Dill after playing with a player like Kismet because they are both really good superstar complements to their sub duo. They just make the game very easy for whoever they're playing with, and I think when you have probably the highest skill ceiling player in the league next to Scrap, Simp, whatever, when you have that player on your team, the less thinking that player has to do, the better, and all Paco has to do is perform, which is all he does. So I think going from Kismet to Dill is the best transition for him instead of trying to switch or trying to adapt to like a newer play style, because Kiz and Dill do essentially the same thing. I think the S&D on this team is going to be huge because the respawn is not going to be a problem. I think they could fucking 2v4 respawns. So I think search is going to be really important for them. Dill's hardpoint throughout like last season was like kind of bad, and I think a lot of people kind of started to turn their nose up at him a little bit just because of that. But I think that was maybe just like a one title thing because he's historically been pretty good at respawn. Not even respawn, just hardpoint, to be honest. He was good at control. But I think the S&D is definitely going to be the cornerstone for this team because, again, respawns are going to come pretty naturally to them. I don't know how the fuck LAT managed to swoop in here and go rogue and get both of them. I'll take it. Maybe Nade Shot dipped into the gifted fund and Rambo Jambo just fucking crowdfunded the whole thing. I have no idea. I will take it, though. As a fan, I cannot wait to watch them play because they will be there at every tournament. They're going to be on Sunday. They'll be in finals. Like that, anything less than a win and multiple grand finals appearances would be like an absolute failure for this team. And I don't think that's like that much of a crazy statement either. I think if they don't win minimum one tournament with multiple grand finals appearances, this is a failure. This is a fucking ridiculous team. Like, you cannot have Scrap and Paco on the same team and not just dominant. It's not feasible. So the expectations are going to be very high. The hype is going to be there. The pressure will be there. The eyes are going to be there. So it's just up to them to perform. But I am fucking biasly very excited. And we're going into a Treyarch title as well, which is, you know, a whole different conversation. But going to a Treyarch title, roster like this, Thieves fans, the stocks are up, dude. I think the biggest piece in all of this is, well, pieces, 2 players, Sib and Kleenex. I am very curious on what they end up doing, because I think that the Sib C9 thing, I think that's over. I don't think Dante goes back there. Like I said, usually out of game stuff kind of prevents that from happening. Maybe unless it was like with Paco, and there's a world where like, since he's gone, he can come back and like they didn't fuck up. You know what I mean? Like they can just kind of squash beef because he's no longer there. I think that's really the only world where this is a thing, is if the issue was with Paco, and obviously now that he's gone. And Kleenex, because I'm super high on Kleenex. For those of you guys that, you know, listen to me talk about Kyle on stream a lot, and when it comes to him, I'm super high on Toby. I think he's a great Call of Duty player. I think he fills a niche in this league better than a lot of people do. So I'm curious to see what happens there. Maybe it's just boring and like they get retained and that like rumored beans thing happens on Toronto and everyone just stays and it's just a big old European team. And that's the case. I don't know what Dante does, because if I'm Dante, I'm trying to get on that Toronto team. Also, I didn't even mention Dan. I kind of skipped over Dan. I'm super happy for Dan. I'm ecstatic for Dan, actually, to get to be as good as he is and to see him like have a team like this around him, bro. I'm super fucking happy for Dan. It's gonna be great. FaZe winning 4 of 6, dude. I'll take that. Nah, Dan deserves it, bro. I'm super happy for him. I know that he had like after he got dropped from Optic, there was a lot of like stuff coming out about how he is as like a teammate and like his mentality and stuff. And not being like firsthand last year, but being around enough and like hearing some stuff and like seeing their practice and just how he is as a teammate, he has come a long way. So to see the way that he's got this team around him now, and if he doesn't have to be a superstar anymore, if he can go back to the Optic like way of playing where he's kind of gap filling, leading a little bit, doing the shit that needs to be done, and kind of taking a backseat to Scrap and Paco, I think this team is insane. Because if your backbone is now Dan, who has the ceiling of what he had last year, as just like someone that's, again, gap filling, just doing the shit that needs to be done, fucking insane roster, dude. Actually insane roster. Like, you have 2 superstar once-in-a-lifetime opportunity players in Scrap and Paco, and then you have Dill and Dan as just the backbone of the team. So I don't see a downside other than Search. And like I said, if Troy does end up coming, I think that will help a lot.